Good morning and welcome to Faith and Work. My name is Carol Evans and I'm so glad that you're here. Today's episode is really unique. I've never recorded an episode quite like this before. The content will be similar to what we've talked about in previous episodes, but I had a totally different episode slated for today. I've actually already recorded it, and yesterday I was sitting in church and just taking notes frantically because this thought came to mind, and I thought I need to pause the episode that was supposed to go on the 28th, and I need to record this episode really quickly just to get it in to talk about it on the 28th. And so I hope you enjoyed today's content. It's something that we talked about in our couples class, and also something that has just been on my mind and in my life. I've seen a thread of this in my life. And the topic we're going to talk about today is the importance of finding a mentor. The importance of finding a mentor. We can think about a mentor relationship and immediately a few faces or names come to mind. It might not be the people that you meet for coffee or meet for lunch. It might not be the person that comes over for a game night or you go to a mom's play date with. Those are all really, really good and needed friendship relationships. But a mentor is someone that you can go to seek counsel. A mentor is someone who can speak into your life. And that relationship is special, it's unique, and it's also a very trusted relationship. I want to look at a couple of biblical examples in just a minute, but first I want to tell you about a few people in my life that have done that for me and the value that I had from those relationships. There was a lady years ago, her name was Gloria Gordon, and I'll probably get emotional talking about her because the role that she played in my life was so pivotal. And some people probably met her or interacted with her, and maybe their experience wasn't the same as mine. For some reason, when I met her, we just had a click in our relationship and we just became instant friends. And there was probably about 50 years separating Mrs. Gordon. And even to say Gloria Gordon out loud just sounds weird because I only ever called her Mrs. Gordon. But she was the dean of women of the college that I was at for several years. And she was instrumental in helping me meet my husband. She was a sweet, sweet friend, and I looked up to her as a Christian mentor. She was not someone that I had career advice or counsel from, but she was someone that I could talk to about anything. She would listen, she would pray with me about it, and she would bring me back to a healthy perspective or a healthy way of looking at it. Even if it wasn't something she had life experience in, she was someone that I could go to, and she wouldn't always tell me I was right. I think that's a really important quality of a mentor. A mentor is not the friend that says, "Oh, girl, they did you wrong." Or a mentor is not someone who immediately tells you that your outlandish response is 100% justified. Even if it is, they will stop, they will listen. And that mentor relationship with someone who is a good listener. Finding a mentor is finding someone who is a really good listener. Someone who will take what you have to say, who will help you digest it. And sometimes talking out loud to a mentor, you know what you have to do. And sometimes that's all they need to say is, you know what you have to do. And you do, having that person in your life that you can voice those things to. That's a really, really important relationship. Mrs. Gordon was someone that I knew in college. She was instrumental in helping me to get to know David a little bit more, but she also is someone who helped with my wedding shower. When my mom didn't live in the same state, my mom came in town for my wedding shower here in Tennessee, and she put us up in our beautiful guest room, and she helped actually with the reception. She let me borrow some of her fancy silver for the reception. We had a very quick wedding in between semesters because my husband's a teacher. And so we only had a short window to get married between college and school schedules and everything else. And so we didn't have a ton of time to plan. I was a full-time student. I was a resident assistant. I was trying to work. We were remodeling a house. So the wedding was just put together with the in-betweens and leftovers of our time and what we could gather. And she was very gracious. Even after we got married, there were several times we would meet for lunch, and she would just listen to me talk. She would ask about my life. She would check up on me. She would call me from time to time and say, "Hey, I'm just checking up on you." I would run into her at the grocery store. I took the boys over to meet her several times, and she let them come, and she said, "Bring them over to my pool." And so I'd bring the boys over to her pool. And she was someone who was such a good, healthy mentor for me. She passed away. She passed away a few years ago, and going to that funeral was pretty tough. She represented a lot of years of growth and a big part of my journey to finding who I am in Christ. And she encouraged me. She counseled me. She really cheered me on. I remember going to her service, and I was standing in line to greet the family, and someone that was standing near me said, "Are those her kids? Are those her grandkids?" And they were there because they had gone to the same church that she went to, but they really did not know her very well. And instantly, I got a little defensive in my own spirit. I wanted to say, "You really didn't know her, did you?" Because if you talked to her for any length of time, you knew her family. You knew which grandchild was in college. You knew what sports they were in. You knew when their next family trip was going to be. She looked forward to those trips every year. As a mentor, she treated me like her equal, even though there was so much more in her life that she had accomplished. She was very wise. She'd gone through a lot, and yet she still took the time to take me to lunch, invite me over, call me, answer my calls. And I'll never forget that. She exemplified the kind of mentor that I want to be for other young women in my life. No matter how old I get, no matter what's going on in my life, I hope that I can be a Mrs. Gordon no matter what's going on, that I always have time. Even with having a busy schedule, she always made time. I will never forget the influence that she had on my life. Yesterday, this topic came up when we were looking at Luke, at the relationship between Elizabeth and Mary. Mary, the mother of Jesus, had just found out that she was going to receive a child. And it's so interesting when you look at that passage in Luke. You can look at John, you can look at several places where it talks about the relationship with Mary and Elizabeth. I think Luke is the one that gives the most detail. But it's a beautiful picture when you look at Mary running to Elizabeth. And something that I wanted to call out here that we didn't really get to dive into in our small group yesterday was that Mary was a young girl. We don't know how old exactly she was. We know that she was young and that she wasn't married yet. But Mary runs to Elizabeth, who is older, who is well past the age of having children, and who is also carrying a miraculous child. But what I love about the story of Elizabeth and Mary is that Elizabeth could have said, "Do you have any idea how long I've waited for this child?" And she didn't. She rejoiced with her. She worshiped with her. She mentored her. She was there for her for the rejoicing. I'm sure while Mary was there with Elizabeth, there was some conversation of, "I'm scared. I don't know what to do." But what I love about the whole account of Elizabeth and Mary, and what I highlighted yesterday and I wrote down, I have a notes folder in my phone that I just keep different notes and things that no matter where I'm at, if I'm at work or I'm at church or I'm at the boys' school, something will happen and I'll think, "Oh, that's really good. I need to talk about that in the podcast." And I'll just write a few things down. But in Luke chapter 1, you have the whole account of, at first you have the story of Elizabeth and Zacharias and everything that they go through when finding out that Elizabeth is going to have a baby. And you hear that, you see that whole account. And then you see, I think it's in verse 26, where an angel comes and tells Mary that she's going to have a baby. And so then she goes and she talks to Elizabeth. And Elizabeth is like, girl, you're never going to believe this. Me too. They're at completely different areas of their life. Elizabeth's husband is a priest in the synagogue, and Mary's not even married yet. And there's this huge difference in their ages, and yet somehow that doesn't matter. They rejoice together. They weep together. I love in verse 46 when Mary is just praising God, and she's just crying out to God. I don't know if this was a song or a prayer, or maybe a little bit of both. Sometimes right in the middle of praying, a worship song will come to mind, and you just have to stop and just worship God right in the middle of the prayer. And that's kind of the spirit that I read verse 46 on. It says, "And Mary said, My soul doth magnify the Lord, and my spirit hath rejoiced in God my Savior. For he hath regarded the low estate of his handmaid. For behold, from whenceforth all generations shall call me blessed. For he that is mighty hath done to me a great things. Holy is his name. His mercy is on them that fear him, and from generations to generations. He hath showed strength with his arm. He hath scattered the proud in the imagination of their hearts. He hath put down the mighty from their seats, and exalted them of low degree. He hath filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he hath sent empty away. He hath holpen the servant of Israel, in remembrance of his mercy. He has spoke to our fathers, to Abraham, and of his seed forever." And Mary abode with her about 3 months, and returned to her own house. I don't know what all their conversation was, but I love that the safe place Mary wanted to go was to Elizabeth's house. And when we think about having a mentor relationship, someone that can rejoice with you when you're rejoicing, that can weep with you when you weep, not just a friend, but also that person that when you go to and say, I'm scared, and they can help get your perspective in a good place. Sometimes friends are awesome for defending us, but not every friendship is the kind of friendship that they will speak up if we're wrong about something. They will speak up when we're hurt. Sometimes a friend will grab a bat and want to go bust someone's windows or something, and everyone needs a friend like that. I have a couple that I will not name their names on a podcast, but I have a couple that if I said, hey, this happened, it's really hard, so-and-so, man, what they said really hurt me or really bothered me or whatever. Their kid hurt my kid. It doesn't matter. And they'd be like, okay, let's go over there right now. And if you're listening to this, you know who you are. But finding a mentor relationship of someone that can speak up for you, someone that can speak into you, someone that can say, hey, this is something you need to think about. This is something you need to pray about. I feel like we're kind of getting a little off base here, or I've noticed a trend or a pattern in the things that you bring me. They are usually about this or about that, someone that can speak into that. When we look at the example of Paul, right after Paul became a Christian on the road to Damascus, we hear a lot about that Damascus conversion and how miraculous it was. Paul was literally on the way to go bring Christians in. When he stopped on the road, his eyes were blinded, and Jesus spoke to him and said, basically, what are you doing? And he said, who are you, Lord? And he said, I am Jesus whom thou persecutest. And I love that he said, who are you, Lord? Because Paul was someone who knew the law. He was literally out to get the Christians who believed that Jesus had come and Jesus was God's son. But he was someone who believed in the law. He knew the law. He practiced the law. He took the law very seriously. And so it was really it's like, Jews against Christian believing Jews or Jesus believing Jews. And Paul was right in the middle of that. But after that conversion, you have this person who's very zealous, who's very passionate. And then from there, he's converted. And we have years in between Paul's conversion and when he actually started his ministry. Sometimes in the Bible, we forget that the time that passes between when we read a few chapters and verses in one book and then we skip over to Ephesians or Galatians and we think, oh, this is the same Paul. And it is the same Paul, but there's years difference between that Damascus conversion and his later on in his ministry. Part of that gap of time was the mentors that he had. You can read in Acts, I think it's 13, maybe 15. I'll turn over there and find it. There's years and gaps where there was Barnabas that spoke up for him. When no one else would trust him, Barnabas said, hey guys, I really think he's trustworthy. And Barnabas took him in. And then you have Aquila and Priscilla that he stayed with, and they were tent makers, and he learned from them. And then it says that they heard him teaching in the temple, and they said, hey, we have a couple things that we want to teach you. And they did, and they invested in him. You also see him and Peter interacting. You have years of time. I've read several different articles about the time and the gaps of time. And most articles, there's a consensus between anywhere between 9 or 11 years that we have just from historical and archaeological evidence of where Paul was and when he was from that road to Damascus until he really started his full ministry and he was sent out on his first full ministry. There was between 9 and 11 years. Paul had people that spoke into him. The Holy Spirit ministered to him and conveyed a lot of things to him, but he also had people in his life that ministered to him. There have been different points in my professional career where I needed different types of professional advice. So when I think about someone that I go to for long-term vision and strategy, there's a previous boss that I go to, Nathaniel, and I can get a lot of long-term strategy type insight from him. He is someone that taught me a lot when I was new in the IT space, and I was very comfortable and loved being down in the weeds, being down right in the middle of all the chaos. And Nathaniel was very much a long-term thinker and planner, and that way of thinking was new for me. And so for me now to be able to go to him years later and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or what are your thoughts on that? He's someone I've gotten a lot of good long-term strategy and mindset thinking from. There's another couple that comes to mind when I think friend and mentor. Wes and Laura come to mind. Wes and Laura have been getting together with David and I for close to 10 years now. And we do couples date nights, we do game nights, we'll do movie nights, and they've really walked through a lot of life with us. We've been there in their life for a lot of things. They've been there in our life for a lot of things. And when I think about someone who's been a mentor and an encourager, immediately Wes and Laura come to mind. Laura has spoken such truth and wisdom into my life. And even when they didn't even realize it, David and I have pulled away from so many nights at their house, whether it's going to a restaurant together, going to their house and enjoying a meal together, them coming to our house. We've enjoyed so many great life-giving conversations where they shared about what was going on with them in their life as they walk through the same season that David and I are in. And as we have gone through, they've been there when both of our kids were born, and they've brought over meals to us, and they've just been such encouragers, but also mentors. When I talked to Wes about wanting to do a podcast, and I said, I feel like I want to do a podcast. I fully expected him to say, now, Carol, make sure you're prepared. And don't forget to get the outline done for your first 12 episodes. And, think about this, and you got to think about this. And he didn't do that at all. He said, well, that's great. And when you're ready to get the equipment and the hardware, let me know. I can help you get that all set up. And I was kind of taken back because just like Elizabeth with Mary, and just like Aquila and Priscilla with Paul, Wes and Laura have said, hey, God's given you something to do. Okay, we're going to walk with you as you go do this thing. And instead of discouraging and instead of saying, you know what, you're really not ready for a podcast. Because honestly, the first time I ever talked to him about it, I wasn't ready for a podcast. But when I was ready, I went right back to him and I said, hey, you told me when I was ready to come to you and you would help me, and I'm ready. And he sent me all the links to get all the equipment. When I said, okay, I've got the equipment, I've got it set up, I'm trying to make sure I get the right audio software, the right recording software, what host site should I use? He gave me a call and he said, hey, I'm going to talk you through this. And I wrote frantic notes as he poured a bunch of wisdom and knowledge and information on. They have been encouragers. They have walked hand in hand with us as we walk through phases of life. Wes lost his mom a few years ago, and they were some really unique friends that could mentor, could help. And then when mom died, they came to the funeral and they knew exactly what we were walking through. Every loss is different. Every gain is different. But a mentor in your life can be there to encourage you. They can be there to lift you up, not just on the good days, not just on the days when you're launching a podcast and you're so happy, but they're there on the really hard days too. A mentor is someone that you need to have open, honest, transparent conversations with. A mentor is someone that you trust. A mentor is someone who is trustworthy, who you know when you share something with them, it's not going to end up all over social media. It's not going to be talked about in rooms that you're not in. A good, healthy mentor can walk with you through some really tough situations. They can encourage you. Mrs. Gordon didn't say, you know what, Carol, you are not ready to be a mom. Even though I probably wasn't in so many areas. And Wes never said, you know what, you're not ready for a podcast, because I wasn't. But a good mentor like Mrs. Gordon, like Nathaniel, like Wes and Laura, they have walked with us. And when we said, hey, this is something God's put on our heart, or hey, we're kind of leaning this direction, they've said, you know what? We're going to be right here. We're going to walk with you through this. And if you need something, like advice on hardware or software, we'll be right here. If you have a mentor in your life that has been there for you, I want to encourage you to reach out to them after hearing this episode and just thank them. Thank them for the encouragement that they've been. Thank them for walking with you through a lot of really tough stuff. If you don't have a mentor and you're looking for a mentor, I want to encourage you to think about someone that's going to hold you accountable, someone that's going to have tough conversations with you, someone that's willing to go into a deep conversation. You know, I can only imagine with Elizabeth and Mary in Luke chapter 1. I don't know what all they talked about in those 3 months that Mary was there. But I can only imagine, for my sanctified imagination, I can only imagine Elizabeth telling Mary, you're about to go through some really tough times. In our culture, you may or may not be accepted in every circle anymore. And there might be some people that treat your son differently because they don't understand. And they might add up the months and say, oh no, did you get pregnant before you and Joseph were officially married? All of that was going to happen. All of that stuff was there. But yet when Mary left being with her mentor, left this older woman, Elizabeth, when she left her, she wasn't overwhelmed. She wasn't discouraged. She didn't sit in how hard her life was going to be and how difficult it was going to be, because if she knew the Torah, she knew the prophecy, she knew what would happen. But when she left Elizabeth, she wasn't overwhelmed. She wasn't full of all the facts of how difficult it was going to be. She left empowered. She left singing praises to God for how good God was to entrust her with this child. If you are a mentor to people, I want to challenge you to take that responsibility so seriously. Think about what you're pouring into them. Think about what you are saying to them and the wisdom and counsel and advice that you give, and how long-lasting it is. Pray over those relationships that you have, whether you are the one doing the mentoring or someone else is mentoring you. There are people in my life that I have the joy and privilege of mentoring. It truly, truly is an honor, but it's also a responsibility. So if you're looking for a mentor, find someone who is honest, find someone who is trustworthy, find someone that shares your biblical worldview. There's a lot of people that I can go to. I can read books. I can listen to their podcast. They've got great leadership podcasts, but I wouldn't count them as a mentor because of their worldview is just different than mine, and we would not be aligned on that. There's people that have mentored me in business. There's people that have mentored me as a mom. There's people that have mentored me in my Christian faith. If you are listening and you are a little bit nervous to find someone who's that mentor, I would encourage you to make it a matter of prayer. It's worth it to invest in those relationships. God's given us many, many biblical examples of people that mentored each other in the Bible. I have shared some examples from my own life of people that have mentored me, just a couple that came to mind as I was jotting down notes for this episode. But if you are a mentor to someone, please take that relationship so seriously. I'm so glad that Mrs. Gordon did. I'm glad she didn't give up on me. I'm so thankful for Wes and Laura and the investment that they have made into David and I's life over the last 10 years. I'm thankful for Nathaniel and the wisdom that he shared with me and the long-term vision and strategy. There's some practices that he's given me that I still use today, even though he's not been my boss in a long time. There's some things I still use from him today. Different people in your life, they might be mentors that come and go. They might be mentors that stay for a long time. If you have someone like that in your life, reach out to them today. Thank them for their influence. Thank them for the investment that they've made. And if you are the mentor, make sure to take the time to have quality time with that person who is looking up to you so much. They hang on every word you say. Take that relationship seriously. It is a gift. Don't waste it. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Faith and Work, where we focused on the importance of having mentors. I hope this episode encouraged you if you are a mentor, and I hope it inspired you to find one if you don't have one now. Share this episode with a friend or a coworker, and leave us a review and a rating on whatever platform you enjoy Faith and Work. Until next time, keep living out your faith and work.